My name is Pat O'Brien. I'm a physiotherapist and I'm the creator of the pobroll. The pobroll is a totally waterproofed, calming bed bathing wrap. It was initially conceived and designed to improve the comfort, dignity and respect afforded to those who require washing while in bed for whatever the reason. However, while working closely with those living with severe dementia, another unexpected benefit became strikingly clear. This presentation aims to show unequivocally how the pobroll could be transformational in the reduction of distress caused by necessary but often unwanted intimate washing, which can trigger a stress response or even panic. Until now, carers have had to use direct physical restraint as a method of last resort. I'm going to show you a better way. Let me introduce you to Stan. Stan had a diagnosis of severe dementia and needed 24-hour care. He hated being undressed, getting cold, feeling exposed, and being touched. So, when it came to intimate care, staff were met with kicks and punches and struggled to manage his behaviour, as Stan fought desperately to defend himself from what he perceived as an assault. Physical restraint techniques were employed as a last resort, but on a regular basis. This required 3 conflict management trained carers, plus a nurse to monitor. What was the impact of this on Stan? Well, Stan was undressed. He got cold, he felt exposed, he was directly touched skin to skin. And what this did was send him into a panic every day. Despite being held in what was a designated safe way of lawful restraint, the direct physical contact fueled his distress, and he would strain against the carers to the point of making himself sick. He was at high risk of aspiration, as well as other stress-induced health crises such as heart attack or stroke. And for this reason, a nurse had to be present at every intervention to ensure his safety. What was the impact on the carers? Well, there were the obvious physical injuries. Staff reported bruising and scratches from being punched and scratched, and also back and shoulder strains from attempting to hold him for considerable periods of time in contorted and awkward postures. Perhaps more worrying was the level of mental torment. Many staff were very conflicted about the level of physical restraint they were being asked to perform every day. This was somewhat at odds with the reasons they'd signed up for a career in care, and it didn't sit well with them. They were both fearful of injury and also fearful of getting it wrong, messing up the techniques, being held accountable for what might happen. And the level of mental anguish when they were coming into work meant that they were under considerable stress, which was actually spilling over into their home lives too, and having a significant impact on their relationships. For the care provider, there were some very worrying concerns. Some carers refused to participate in Stan's care, and those left were overloaded and exhausted. Staff injuries increased while staff morale sank, and some staff resigned. Stan's care needs were a huge drain on the unit's resources, and staffing levels became dangerously low. The nurse could not guarantee attendance, and without medical oversight, Stan's physical restraint was no longer safely managed or lawful, and put him at significant risk of serious medical event. It was clear that Stan's needs were not being met, as a demoralised team was spiralling down into unsafe practices and with no solution in sight. I decided this had to stop. I got a pobroll from my car. I positioned it on Stan's bed, ready for when he was hoisted back for washing. He was hoisted directly onto the bottom layer and then quickly and firmly cocooned within its warm and comforting folds before being rolled into a fetal position and held snugly still, wrapped up and cosy, facing away from the carer's gaze. So from Stan's perspective, he was cocooned, he was warm and comforted, he was in a fetal position, he was held snugly, he was wrapped up and cosy, and he was facing away from the carer's gaze. He attempted to punch twice. His reach, though, was limited by the pobroll containment, and his fists had little impact on the soft terry cotton holding him, so he got no reaction. He wriggled a little, as if testing how firmly he was being held, and then he simply stopped fighting. The carers, no longer distracted by having to physically hold his flailing arms and legs, were able to open the bottom flaps of the pobroll to wash him with a level of modesty and discretion they'd never been able to achieve before. And the washing was completed quickly and with minimum fuss, and once done the pobroll was let go so that Stan could push it away as he wished, or stay cosy and warm within its layers. And because Stan did not get cold, was not exposed, felt safe and secure, without any shame or embarrassment, had no fear of falling off the bed, and was not touched directly, he just stopped fighting and laid still. How did the carers feel about using the pobroll with Stan? First of all, they felt it gave them a far greater level of control over his movements. They liked the fact that they could control his movements in a kind and non-threatening manner, which sat much better with them than the hands-on physical restraint. This was a more consistent manner. They did not have to twist or contort themselves into awkward postures. They felt much more agency over what they were doing. They also really liked the fact that the pobroll created a simple barrier between themselves and Stan, therefore protecting both of them from any injuries. They were really surprised that it was so easy compared to how they had usually undertaken this task. The fact that it increased the predictability, took away their fears about having to change what they're doing to match Stan's movements. There was no longer this level of unpredictability, so their confidence grew and their fear of engaging with Stan reduced. The whole unit became a more positive place to be. And as their expectations of interventions with Stan changed, it was noted that Stan's behaviours also began to change. Stan became more accepting, or at the very least, less distressed. He stopped vomiting at every intervention. Sometimes fewer carers were needed to look after him. That meant there was increased staff capacity and safety on the whole unit, and pressures were reduced. There were fewer incidents reported. Overall, staff felt much happier, and management could relax, knowing that they were finally compliant with regulatory safe care standards. Dan's needs were finally being met. I hope that, like me, you will recognise the huge potential for the pobroll to be a complete game changer for those faced with these challenging scenarios on a daily basis. Direct physical restraint is no longer the only option where intimate care is concerned. There is a new way forward. It is safer, easier, and kinder. There are no downsides. It is called the pobroll, and it is the better way. Thank you for your time.